Jonathan, Sam, good evening to you. I think there is only one place to start, and that is the FA Cup. Replays being scrapped as part of this agreement between the FA and the Premier League. This is the back page of the Mail. FA Cup war, lower league clubs threaten revenge after replays are scrapped. And Sam, perhaps unsurprisingly, this is the sort of tone, this is the sort of reaction that a lot of the papers are going with tonight.
Yeah, David, it's sort of turned into this kind of domestic dispute with the battle lines roughly drawn between the FA and the Premier League on one side and then the Football League on the other. And clearly there's quite a few Football League chairmen speaking out about this. That it's kind of spying a conspiracy, really, to deprive them of this sort of traditional right to replays and clearly a huge part of English football heritage. And I think we're all sad to lose it, really. Who's responsible will be the big question, which will unfold over the next few weeks. I mean, Premier League have been very clear that, and the FA have been clear that it's been approved by the FA's main board, and Rick Parry, the chairman of the EFL, sits on that board. The calendar for next year has been approved by, and we're going to mention quite a lot of boards tonight, but the Professional Game Board, which has 3 EFL representatives on it. But, I mean, if we just sort of take the camera back, I mean, the bigger picture for me is that this is the pressure that is brought to bear by the battle at the very, very top of football, which is between UEFA and FIFA. They both want the match days, they want the calendar for their own competitions. So that's the expanded Champions League in UEFA's case. It's the Club World Cup in FIFA's case. And they want it because they want their big slice of broadcast money. And we've discussed it on the show before. The Champions League is going to be much bigger from next season. 8 group stage games plus another knockout round before the round of 16. The group stage is going to go into January, which is clearly a traditional FA month with the 3rd and 4th rounds. And that is the squeeze. That is what English football, that is what domestic football competitions all over Europe are having to deal with now. They're having to squeeze the same amount of games into much, much fewer match days. And we are feeling the bite now. And this is sad. It's sad because it is going to deprive smaller clubs of those extra games, of that revenue and a huge part of English football tradition.
Let's have a look at your paper, Jonathan, The Guardian, how they are reflecting this story. An absolute disgrace decision to scrap FA Cup replays is met with fury, this piece from Paul McInnes and Morgan Ofori. Do you agree with Sam? This is, I suppose, a significant step, a small but significant step towards that sort of quite strange, maybe it feels like, in the way that you're speaking about it, Sam, dystopian reality of where we are heading, with European and ultimately world football. How significant a moment do you think this is, Jonathan?
Yeah, Sam has written a brilliant piece about this in the Telegraph tomorrow, which I recommend everyone should read, actually, that there is a bigger picture here. And I think what this represents is the Premier League, and I guess specifically the biggest Premier League clubs, essentially declaring war on the rest of the game, the smaller clubs. This is, if you look at the FA Cup as a competition, right, and when you think about replays, you think about the big sort of money spinning glamour replays, sort of below Championship clubs getting a replay at a Premier League club, right? Do you know how often that's happened this season? It's happened twice this season. It didn't happen at all this season. I think this season it was Bolton and Blackpool. They got replays at Luton and Nottingham Forest. This is something that doesn't actually happen that often. And I don't think you can run a competition on the basis of something that actually happens really rarely. It's great for the lower league clubs who get the money spinning replay, but it happens so rarely that it is not a sustainable basis for a financial settlement for the whole of the pyramid. So on a sporting level, I don't actually mourn replays that much. I don't think anyone needed to see 210 minutes of Hull against Birmingham for this season, for example. The key point is the FA has this incredibly prized asset on its hands, not just the replays and the broadcast revenue you get from them, but also the time in the calendar. And they've sold that off for a pittance. And I think the EFL are right to be furious about this. I think EFL clubs have been sold down the river. The FA have essentially sold one of their most prized assets for, what is it, an extra £30 million a year in grassroots funding, chicken feed for the Premier League, and some very minor concessions. I think it makes I think it makes a compromise between the EFL and the Premier League over a new deal. I think it makes that a lot less likely. I think the Premier League, I guess, mobilising a little bit, becoming a little bit more aggressive towards this proposed national like financial the football regulator. I think that's a sign of increasing tensions, and I think it makes the game as a whole less harmonious. This is a power grab, no doubt about it, as big a power grab as anything the Super League clubs managed to do 3 years ago.
What about the EFL's position in all of this, Sam? And Jonathan alluded to it there. They've been sold down the river, their clubs, those other 72, not the top 20. Because obviously as well that they felt like they had, we were talking about, how football in this country, is looked at, is governed going forward, talking about the regulator, and they were talking about Carabao Cup semi-finals, and they felt that they had some sort of bargaining tool there, and it feels like, that's all been, they've been kind of cut out of this discussion. They've been chucked off the WhatsApp group.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how that develops. Clearly, there's been some quite outspoken club chairman from the Football League talking about it today on social media, and that's been interesting. I wonder when they wind it back and they ask the EFL about whether they were given the opportunity to intervene or whether they were given the opportunity to veto it, what will they say? Because it seems to me that that there's been a bit of a Hobson's choice really for the authorities here. They are getting squeezed, as we've discussed on the wide match calendar, and they've tried to come to some kind of compromise that many people clearly feel is unpalatable, and I understand why. If UEFA and FIFA had their way, there would be no League Cup. So Ceferin and England don't want any country to have a second domestic cup competition. They want an 18-team top flights, and that has prompted some countries to do exactly that. The EFL still have the League Cup, which is a crucial revenue income. I know that's kind of reducing a much-loved competition to pounds and pence, but I mean, essentially that's what it is. And I think the EFL are clearly, I think there's a lot of clubs that evidently feel decisions are being made way above their heads, and that's a frightening place to be when you're working on quite a small budget anyway, and you can see the plates of football, the tectonic plates of football moving. The question will have to be over the next days and weeks, how did that decision get reached, and were their views adequately represented, and it will be interesting to see what the response to that is.
One of the other sort of parts of the discussion here, and it's sort of related, but it's also a side issue, and it's kind of not gone particularly, reported, is the Premier League's winter break disappearing. 5 years it's been in force. Now it's gone, and they say it's because of advice of sort of the medical experts, but that actually a greater summer break is more beneficial. Jonathan, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously players need proper time to rest in the summer, but I think all the sports science says that they need proper rest periods during the season as well. And the relentless schedule, particularly in England with the schedule that they play over Christmas and New Year, it makes January a logical time to have a slight break. And they did it quite neatly with having basically a whole Premier League round of fixtures across 2 weekends, and you saw how teams like Arsenal use that break, use that time to go away, refresh, recharge, work on a few things on the training route they didn't have time to do, and really attack the second half of the season with a new vigour. That's all gone now, and I think that is one of the inevitabilities of the squeezing of the calendar that Sam's talking about, that a lot of people have talked about. In that there simply isn't enough goodwill towards the people who play the game and the people who care about the game from the people who control the purse strings and who control the scheduling, and there is not enough goodwill. There's basically not enough human care, because these are windows that can be swallowed up by fixtures, which create broadcast revenue, which create shareholder revenue, which these are all the things that we've been saying for years and years and years. And it's great that they're having a proper break in the summer, which will probably be swallowed up by pre-season tours and things like that. But I don't see any reason why they couldn't have both a proper winter break and a proper summer break. But that's not the world we live in.
Yeah, and there is a wider issue here, isn't there? I was speaking to a player who plays in one of Europe's top 5 leagues, and he was saying how he is, I suppose, just aware that what the club's motivation is when they go abroad, and particularly very far abroad, to play a post-season friendly and then fly straight back. This is now that the football season is growing ever longer, and yet seems to have less and less space within it. So a longer slog for the players involved, and surely player welfare, Sam, is now a critical issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's probably a part to play now for the PFA and its counterparts across the world as the players' union to represent its players. And as Jonathan said, these are people who, for all the fantastic salaries that they earn and the great fame and acclaim that they attract, they still have to be looked after. And if you look at there's an orchestra of tiny violins for multimillionaire footballers, but if you look at their schedule, it's pretty astonishing. And as mentioned before, the FIFA Club World Cup arrives in the calendar next summer, which is a 32-team tournament the size of a European Championships, played in June and July. So really, football is becoming a 12-month game, and its great stars are in great demand. They're getting paid more and more. But of course, as the broadcast wealth goes upwards and more goes to the bigger clubs, there's less for the players who play it further down the pyramid. And for many of us, they're just as important as the big stars.
Mm. Yeah, and you sort of do wonder also in terms of not just the players, but the quality of football we are likely to see if we're having to play many, many, many more games. Will the game itself, I suppose, suffer?